Here we go, folks. Carolina returns to the Comic Book Syndicate. How are you, Carolina?
I'm great, thanks.
Awesome. Okay, so we just saw Logan. First, let me ask, are you a fan of the other X-Men films?
Yes, I've been watching them since they came out back in the day and just trying to keep up with them as they come out. And this one was interesting.
This was not like other superhero movies. Jolie, how would you describe this film?
Amazing. Way better than absolutely everything else.
Logan transcends the superhero genre and makes it into something far more relatable and full of depth than it has any right to be. This is Oscar contender type filmmaking right here, and it's one of the best superhero movies ever made.
What do you think, Andrea? Did it deliver?
Yes, I haven't seen a Wolverine like that ever. How berserk he went and just the amount of bloodshed was on point for me.
Very, very different than all the other Marvel movies. Just like the whole feel of it, really. Very gritty, very dark, very melodramatic.
I think the fact that we've been watching these X-Men movies for like 18 years, it really drives home the fact that like it feels real. Like Wolverine has known Professor X for almost 20 years or whatever it is. Do you think that helps like the relationship with the characters in this film?
Absolutely. This film is so much a family drama as it is an action film. And it's that relationship, that paternal relationship between Wolverine and Charles. They even make jokes about it. And then you have the dynamic with the girl all wrapped up in there. And it's so... oh God, it's so like heartfelt, and you just want everyone to make it. and sometimes, as the movie shows you, you just can't get what you want.
Does this feel like a typical superhero film?
No, I mean, I think everyone kind of had it wrong when they were like, oh, well, they're superheroes, so we must make action science fiction. No, they made a drama and kind of like a thriller. But I only say thriller because it was quite gory. Despite
its genre trappings and its superhero status, I mean, it's still first and foremost a character study. And even people who aren't a fan of superhero movies or superhero or comic books or anything like that, they will find so much to enjoy and so much to think about. When watching Logan, I was reminded of a film like Manchester by the Sea, which is about people and about how people interact with one another and how people interact with themselves. And in Logan, you could see that there's so much going on with the people and how they relate to each other and how they relate to themselves. It's about regret. It's about loss. It's about the inevitability of death. It's about all these universal themes that should not or typically would not be in a superhero film, but with something like The Dark Knight or Watchmen, or even on a more grounded level, Unbreakable, I mean, you start to realize that, yeah, there are actual stories that can be told about people and not just, razor-fisted, tough guys who can just demolish anybody in sight.
As I'm watching it, I didn't want it to end. Like, I felt like I could watch this movie forever. It reminded me of Walking Dead on a good day, because there aren't all good days in Walking Dead. But it was like, yeah, let it go on forever. I don't care, because we're just focusing on these three characters just on their own, getting to know each other, developing. And I felt like the fact that it was less of a blockbuster, lower budget. Do you think that helped, the fact that they just focused?
Yeah, the simple storyline went so far in my books because you could really focus in on each individual character a lot more. And the way they described like X-23 for somebody that wouldn't necessarily understand her character was really cool. I thought the way, Professor Xavier would say the Foot Claw has something to do with her being female. Sure. Well, of course, because the chromosomes didn't match up. That's why they had to create a female, and that's why the claw went where it did in the comic books.
If someone wanted to know, what is this movie kind of like? What would you compare it to?
Oh, man. You said it earlier. I had a very, at a certain point, I can't remember, like a Walking Dead feel. It was just, so much helplessness and so much, and you weren't, sure, who was safe and who wasn't.
It totally is very Walking Dead. So we've acknowledged that. But I think it's also super Western. I mean, it's such from the the broken hero who has to find redemption driving for Uber, you know.
As we do. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's driving and he's trying to, but there's also these moments in
It's ridiculous. I'm just imagining Clint Eastwood, John Wayne driving.
yeah.
Every Western hero gets to the point where they have to drive for Uber.
Or shoot kids off their lawn.
Exactly. One or the other.
One or the other. But there's also like from being in like a seedy town or city and doing things that you have to do to survive, which is such a Western theme, to then going to places like Mexico and crossing the border and then dealing with cholos.
What is that? What is that exactly?
It's just like a specifically Mexican gangster.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they like steal from cars and stuff. I don't know, whatever. I'm not a Mexican. Different kind of drug trade. No, I'm just kidding. Let's not include that. Let's not include that.
I think the key to this film and to future superhero films is they're going to keep them more realistic, more grounded. And this film felt like the real world with Wolverine and Professor X and X-23 put into it, dropped into it. And I think that's what makes it work. It was lower budget, I assume. There wasn't a lot of CGI. There was almost no CGI that I could see. The director said, we're not going to make a film about New York getting destroyed again. No one wants to see that anymore. Avengers, take note. You can't just blow up buildings anymore and expect people to enjoy it.
There are a couple scenes even that I'm sitting back thinking to myself, wow, Logan, calm down. What are you doing here? But when you start to see, when all the puzzle pieces start to come into place and you realize the sadness and the hidden anger and the rage inside of him that comes out because of his circumstances and because of the circumstances of him, not only himself, but of Charles Xavier. Their relationship too plays a big part. And I think that rage is inherent in their relationship as well, because there's been so much that's happened throughout the X-Men universe up until this point that, a lot of people, some people will fly past their heads, but people who know that universe will understand completely what's being talked about. And even people who are in a general audience would understand as well, because it's very relatable.
And you know what? There's a great scene in the movie where they're all having dinner together with that other family, right? And there's a brief moment where Logan's laughing and Professor X is laughing, right? And you feel like, oh my God, these people are a family, right? Wasn't that great?
The movie should have just ended there.
It could have. Yeah, it could have. You're right. Happily ever after, right?
And then I would have been like, that was nice. All right.
But unfortunately, we won't reveal what happens, but it didn't end there. And then next thing you know, we're all crying. Anyway, okay, let's not talk about that.
It was like Iron Man, where it was like, there's nothing fantastic about him. He's just very good at it. He's like an inventor.
He's very good at what he does.
Is that I'm supposed to get that?
That's Wolverine's main line.
Oh, yeah.
It's his quote. My name is Wolverine. I'm the best there is at what I do, but what I do isn't very nice. Even in this movie where they lace the film with references to the movie Shane, I think what they're really trying to drive home is that this is really a modern day Western, actually a futuristic Western. Do you agree with that? I
certainly agree with that. And what I've been hearing a lot of is that Logan is basically a Western without horses. And it like that statement rings so true, because yes, it is about these rugged, tough people who are in this extraordinary circumstance that they don't know they don't know the outcome of. That's why I think the Shane comparison is very relevant too, because this movie Logan is about death, and it is about how a person can live with death and destruction in a grander scale, because this is the X-Men universe. But there's this particular scene where Shane is quoted in such a powerful way, because that overwhelming atmosphere of death and murder that permeates the whole film, because the film is filled with very visceral deaths, and how these characters cope with these deaths is something that is completely comparable to Shane, because these characters are dealing with death and murder and everything else the same way that Shane does in that film. So I think the comparisons are very, very accurate, but it's also fresh, and it doesn't just rip it off. It doesn't just borrow from the movie. It actually makes something out of it in this context in a very, very satisfying way.
Do you think the R rating made the movie better?
Yeah, it had to be, for sure. There's never been a comic book movie quite like this, I don't think, because out of every single character, he was the one with the powers who, you know, caused him so much angst and so much hurt. And the redemption afterwards for him was well-deserved. And I believe that the way that everything tied together in the end was probably the perfect way for Logan.
Do you think the R rating, I mean, did it help the film? Was it necessary?
It was so, that was the one thing that made this movie the real standout from all of the other X-Men films, because all the other X-Men films are just PG-13, right? Mostly. And going the R-rated route was just, it was a leap. It was a leap in themes, a leap in action, and it brought a surrealistic level of violence to the whole universe that I think it worked. It worked for the story. I think it made everything really like urgent.
What is your opinion of the Wolverine character itself?
I always thought he was kind of one note. Like, oh, he has claws and he swears a bit and he's like a little bit sassy because he's got a big old adamantium chip on his shoulder. But like, this Wolverine was not that Wolverine. I mean, he did grab from some cigars and he's still like really sassy. They spent a lot of time on the character in this film, and I really appreciate that.
You know, you want to try to justify violence, and you want to try to justify the things that we do, even when X-23 says that, she doesn't know. She's a child. She doesn't understand the level, the consequences of these actions that not only she but Wolverine commits as well. But again, that ties back into Shane, because no matter what you do, no matter how you try to justify it or push it back, you can't live with a killing. You can't do it. You know, and that's 100% true, I think. Yeah.
I didn't like the idea of Wolverine having a daughter. Now that I've seen this movie has sold me on X-23. Why don't you tell everybody what's so cool about her?
What's so cool? Oh my God, everything is cool about her.
X-23, the actress that played her, what did you think of this girl?
I thought it was really interesting, and especially with the Spanish, you know, influences on her, and she spoke mostly Spanish too, which was really interesting to me because the character in the comics, she's not like that.
Okay. There's a feeling of dread, even when for those few moments where there's, every time they relax, you think, oh, don't relax too long because those guys are coming, right? Is that how you felt?
Yeah, and it's not also that, it's also like there was no one there to save them. There was no they were really by themselves, and you just knew that like they're by, like, if anything happens, there's like no one's gonna sweep in and save them. And I think that gave the whole movie kind of a much darker, melodramatic feel, because that team wasn't there. And that also made it very distinctive from the other Marvel movies as well, because you're always expecting the heroes to hop in to save the day, and they just weren't there.
So like there's these themes of like westerns going from Mexican settings, which is super emblematic of that theme, to going to North Dakota and South Dakota and that rural aspect of it. So it's so much of an action, redemption, tragedy, and it's so beautiful at the same time with these, again, with more themes of like childhood and loss of innocence. And so, yeah, this is like totally a modern Western with a lot of blood.
If there were no other X-Men movies or Wolverine movies or whatever, this could be an amazing solo feature.
Sure.
For sure.
What do you see happening in future X-Men movies? Does this set up anything, you think?
I don't know. I don't like to think of a future X-Men movie without Hugh Jackman.
What did you think about these bad guys, the Reavers? Did you like them?
I thought they played their role. I didn't find them particularly interesting. I just thought, oh, it's a bunch of military guys chasing them down. They definitely filled the dick role. Like they were very like they were like they really came off as like, I don't like these people.
What about Donald Pierce, the main bad guy? What did you think of him? The guy with the metal hand.
Yeah, I don't know. I found him annoying, and I think that was kind of the point. Like he was supposed to be like this dark, annoying guy. Yeah.
Kind of like an arrogant asshole.
Yeah.
Kind of guys we don't like, right?
It's different. R rating worked for it, and it kind of also just like shook things up a bit, right? So you know that they're not going to get the big save at the end with the R rating.
Yeah.
And I think that really helped.
It's definitely the best one out of all the X-Men movies. I don't even see X-Men movies anymore, and this is just like real shit.
Real fucking shit. R-rated motherfucking shit. You got it. Final words. Do you recommend this film?
I highly recommend this film. I will throw as much money at it as I possibly can, and I highly recommend that you do too.
How many times are you going to see it in theaters?
I saw it once. I will probably see it 5 more times.
Ultimately, do you recommend this film, Andrea?
Absolutely.
Are you going to see it again?
See.
All right. Okay. Do you recommend this film?
Oh, absolutely. Definitely go and see it.
If you're an action film lover, go see it.
This is a gritty action drama, and this is the Wolverine movie people have been waiting for. This is it, Logan.